Let me tell you something I learned about Hitler, which really, I haven't recovered from my shock from this. So we've been looking at the relationship between political belief and personality. Okay, and your political belief is strongly determined by your temperament. So liberal, left types are high in trait openness, that's creativity, and low in conscientiousness. But you can fragment conscientiousness up into industriousness and orderliness. And the real predictor for conservatism is in orderliness, not industriousness. And you might think, well, that's no surprise. Right-wingers are more orderly, hence Hitler's call for order, let's say. But it's one thing to posit that and another thing to measure it. Now it's measurable. And it appears that orderliness is associated with sensitivity to disgust. And this is actually a really big deal. It's a really big deal. So there's a paper that was published in PLOS One about 3 years ago looking at the relationship between the prevalence of infectious diseases and authoritarian political attitudes. And they did it country by country and then within countries by state or province. And the correlation between the prevalence of infectious diseases and authoritarian / right-wing political beliefs at the local individual level was 0.6. And so I want to take this apart a little bit. Okay, so the idea is that this is part of what you might describe as the extended behavioral immune system. And one of the problems with the interactions between groups of human beings in our evolutionary past was, well, exactly what happened to the Native Americans is, you know, they came out and shook hands with the Spanish conquistadors, and then within a couple of generations, 90% of them were dead of smallpox and measles and mumps. And so it's been a truism in our evolutionary past that if you meet a group of if you're a group of isolated humans and you meet another group of isolated humans and you trade pathogens, there's a real possibility that you and everyone you know are going to be dead in no time flat. And so we have a disgust mechanism that produces this implicit, let's call it racial and ethnic bias that is part and parcel of the human cognitive landscape. But the problem with that is that it's rooted in a disgust mechanism that actually serves a protective function. Now, when I was sorting this out, I was reading Hitler's Table Talk, and Hitler's Table Talk is a very interesting book. It's a book of his spontaneous mealtime utterances from 1939 to 1942. And I went through with this new knowledge because people think of conservatives as or fascists as afraid of those who are different. They're not afraid. They're disgusted. And that's not the same thing because you burn things you're disgusted by. And so it was terrifying to me to read it because then I also thought, oh, well, disgust sensitivity is associated with orderliness and you need order in a society in order to maintain it. And the Germans are very orderly, and that was actually a canonical part of their civilization and part of actually what makes them great and powerful. And that just had to tilt a little farther than necessary. And all of a sudden everything needed to get cleaned. And you know, Hitler talked about cleanliness all the time, and he actually meant that. And so this thing that's emerging, you know, you talked about its biological basis, its evolutionary basis. It's part of this deeply rooted disgust system that protects us from dangerous pathogens that can manifest itself and does manifest itself in the political realm. It's not good.